Hi, I'm Davern. I'm here to share my love for tennis with you and to help you be happier on the court. Today's video, we're going to go ahead with the tennis doesn't stop just because it's a little bit wet. We're going to always be able to do something. So we're going to talk about, again, things in professional tennis that I think could be looked at to be improved. Everything that is done everywhere has possibilities to be improved. So for tennis, I'm looking at today the topic of how the whole idea of who is the best player, how the sport is presented to everybody around the world, like the product of the game, trying to see how would it be best to represent tennis to everybody to get a full understanding of the thing and maximize the sport more. So at the moment, and well, for many years, if not the whole time, is basically everybody's very much associated with only the Grand Slams. So the Grand Slam category tournaments, Australian Open, Roland Garros, Wimbledon and the US Open. So the problem with this is that a lot of people who are watching and look at tennis or follow it on the TV or in the online or media, looking at tennis is just 4 times a year. It's just Australian Open, Roland Garros, Wimbledon, US Open, 4 times, men and women. That's it. That's the be all and end all. Who's the best player? Well, of course, the person who has won the most Grand Slam tournaments. So this is, to me, really short of what should be happening. Is if you look at it this way, 2 weeks, of course, it's a major accomplishment to win a Grand Slam tournament, and hardly anybody does. But the thing is that, is it more difficult to win one tournament that goes for 2 weeks and you need to win those 7 matches? Or is it more difficult to be the #1 best player in the world over the whole entire year, all the tournaments throughout the year combined, who has the most points, the most wins, and the more wins at more important tournaments carry a higher weighting for ranking points? Who is the best player? Somebody who wins 1 Grand Slam, or the person who is #1 for that whole year? So in tennis, what they call the person who wins the year, or the world champion, is the name for the men's ATP world champion or the women's WTA world champion. They're the person who finishes as the year-end #1. So to me, finishing an entire year where all the tournaments, all the players, they look at all the performance of the whole year, tallied in and considered and have the weighting for points and rankings, that is the best player for the year. And to me, that far outweighs 1 Grand Slam title within the year. So that's just another way of thinking about it. And then if you're looking at any type of business to be really successful and to be followed and interested in, observed, attended throughout a year, would it be better for any business to say, hey, look, we just have 4 things on a year for 2 weeks? Or would it be better that people realize that professional tennis tours, they're amazing athletes, and the requirement is large. They're going from the start of January for the whole year. So for the women, they're finishing up the tournaments by all the tournaments by the end of October pretty much. So there's 10 months of tournaments going on to decide who's the best player in the world, and all the main titles throughout the year. And the men are normally finishing by about mid-November, an extra 2 weeks. So then they're going for 10.5 months. So this is all the things that go on for the year versus 1 2-week tournament where they're able to win the title there. So of course, I'm not undermining how important is a Grand Slam. I'm just trying to make a picture of that there's the whole sport to be more successful, and for people to realize and follow more tournaments throughout the world and have a better understanding of tennis, and to make it more marketable and people to watch it and follow it and attend it more and keep their interest in and understand more the whole sport, is that there is a bigger picture. There is the whole year. And then if we're looking at what are the really big tournaments, I always like to tell people there are 14 major tournaments, and a lot of people like to call a Grand Slam a major. So for me, the major tournaments are the end of year championship finals, where only the best 8 players for the entire year get to qualify. Okay, so there's one. There's of course the 4 Grand Slam tournaments. So there's another 4, so there you've got 5. And then there's, for the men, what they call the Masters 1000 tournaments, and there's 9 of those, so there's your 14. Whereas with the women's, it's the same thing. There's the end of year finals, the WTA finals, the Tournament of Champions, where only the best 8 players qualify to play, and then they play each other. There's the 4 Grand Slams as well, and for the women, those 9 major tournaments are the Premier Mandatory, where there's 4 of those, and the Premier 5. So there's 4 and 5, there's another 9. So it's equivalent to what the men's version calls the Masters 1000. So you have the 14 major tournaments of the year. So I think calling those major tournaments is a good step to try to draw the picture to people's attention versus, oh, there's only 4 tournaments a year, sorry. And once US Open is done, then that's the end of tennis until, for example, this year, US Open is 31st of August to September 13. Normally always the last Monday of August, and then for 2 weeks, 14 days. So then after that, people are thinking, well, not until the middle of January next year is another Grand Slam Australian Open. So tennis is nothing from September 13 to something like 19th of January 2021, the final 2 weeks of January. That's a lot of time where there is a lot of things happening, and the whole purpose for a season is to see who's the year-end number 1, who's the world champion, like in other sports where they're battling throughout the year and everybody's focused on who the world champion is versus who won one series or one tournament somewhere earlier in the year. So that's going on throughout the year, and that big tournament where they're playing the champion of champions, that's also, of course, after the US Open. So there's a lot of things that go on, and that would build the picture to people to understand how it all works. An easy example for this would be the one that happens over time, a number of occasions where people are saying, that's so stupid in tennis how, this person is the world number 1 player and they don't deserve it. I can tell you for sure, whoever it gets to be the number 1 player in the world, they definitely deserved it, because everybody is able to enter all the tournaments and everyone's competing, and whoever is that number 1 best player in the world, at any stage where the rankings are updated every Monday, or if there's a 2-week event, they'll be updated at the end of that 2-week event. Like after the Grand Slams, they will not put the new rankings out after week 1 of a Grand Slam because the tournament's not over yet. It'll be at the end of the 2 weeks. Whoever is the world number 1, that means for the entire 12 months leading up to this week, where they're become world number 1 for the first time, or again for another week, that means they've got the best results and proven themselves to have performed better than everybody else in the world for 12 whole months. It's not just one lucky thing one day. It's 12 whole months of being the most consistent and best player all around the world through all the tournaments to achieve this. So I'm definitely feeling and saying and trying to urge people to realize that this is far greater achievement than one Grand Slam tournament. So then if we're going back to what I was talking about earlier on, and you're equating it, who's the best player, it's definitely not just who has won the most Grand Slams. So of course, if you make a new system, like as if I'm proposing, players in the past, if they would have known this system, they would have, of course, changed their schedule, and they would have done tournaments differently, and they would have prepared for them and periodized and scheduled themselves to try to peak differently than they did. But now is as good a time as any to try to make the sport better and improve. Every day is a good day to try to be better, is my opinion. So if you're looking at things like, if being the year-end world number 1 player, men's, women's, for the juniors, men's doubles, women's doubles, mixed doubles, all the tennis events, if this is obviously the best, most greatest achievement that you can have, then this should be the first thing that you're looking at. So that's going to mean people and the professional players are going to be saying, look, hey, I need to do a little bit more planning and organizing, and I need to participate in a little bit more than I would otherwise if I'm thinking that, hey, only the Grand Slams are really important and all the rest doesn't really matter because nobody's really judging me on that anyway. So, again, always everybody has their own choices and opinions and motivations and factors. So I'm not sort of trying to put somebody down, but just as an example, to illustrate my point, is Serena Williams is quite well known for especially in the last maybe 6 to 8 years, is not playing at all or hardly anything at all after the US Open, because there are no more Grand Slams and people are not weighing in, hey, how many times has Serena finished the year as the world #1 player versus how many times, for example, is the amazing Steffi Graf, has she finished the year in world #1? So if this is the really key thing that we're looking at, who achieved the year-end #1, players are going to be starting to go, hey, look, I need to play more of these major tournaments instead of skipping them, because there's always normally a couple of Masters tournaments or major tournaments for both the men and women after the US Open, plus the year-end championship. So you've got normally at least 3 really large tournaments at the end of the year, plus at this level of competitiveness. Like, for example, the end of 2019, it was a really close race between Nadal and Djokovic, who would be the year-end #1. Is that would make these players really feel compelled that, hey, if that's the most important achievement, I need to do these major tournaments after the US Open, and I need to make sure I'm going to be at my best and do as well as I can to play the end-of-year championship finals, the WTA finals and the men's ATP finals. So likewise on the men's version, then same again, like, of course, Rafael Nadal is an amazing player and fantastic for the sport. But if you have a little look through the statistics, you'll see that he is also many times not playing the men's ATP finals at the end of the year, because he's looking more for, well, hey, you know, US Open's finished, I've got to save my knees and body, and I'm just worried about if I can overtake Roger and you know, make sure I steer clear of Djokovic in terms of Grand Slam tournaments. He will be tending to skip the end-of-year finals as well, which I feel is a big shame. But if the system is graded towards, okay, #1 most important thing is how many end-of-year world #1 achievements do you have? #2, I think, is winning the end-of-year finals tournament should be considered, valued, appreciated, and classified as more important than a Grand Slam, because once you get to end-of-year finals, that means you're not just part of the 240 players who can enter a Grand Slam. And when I'm saying 240, it means you're going to have 108, for example, the men, 108 direct acceptances. Then you're going to have the wild cards, and then 104 direct acceptances. Then you're going to have the 8 wild cards to go up to 112. Then you've got to have the 16 places for qualifiers to make 128 for the main draw. Then, of course, those 16 qualifiers comes from a pool of another 128 players who are playing off to try to win 3 rounds to get into one of those 16 qualifying spots. So there's 240 players there who are going to be participating in a Grand Slam. When you're able to get to the end-of-year finals, that means, sorry, there's only the best 8 players in the world who are getting into it. It's not open for 240. It's only open to the ones who have proven over the entire calendar year that they're the best and have got the best results. So of course, like I just mentioned, if somebody, for example, that I've brought up, Serena or Rafael Nadal, are not playing the end-of-year finals, then their spot that they qualified will then go open to who is #9, so that you'll still have the best 8 players in the year competing in the end-of-year finals of who's fit enough to play, or who's committed enough to put themselves on the line to play that tournament, who values the tournament. They'll be the 8 best players. And that also means that in terms of degree of difficulty, I'm favouring heavily the end-of-year championship finals in both the men's and women's ahead of Grand Slams, because if you're playing there, that means you don't get to play like in a Grand Slam where there's 32 seeds, so the best 32 players in the world, both men and women, they get separated from each other, so they can't go head-to-head with another top 32 seeded ranked player over the last 12-month rolling system ranking until they've already played 2 players who are the lower players or lower ranked players who they get to play. So when they do that, that means players at the top, they get a chance to not come up against one of the best 8 players in the world immediately. They can play somebody who, well, they do play somebody who's a lower ranking. So in a way that shows that they are unable to achieve the same level of tennis consistently as the top players are. So the players can sort of build their game in, get ready for the match even if they haven't played for a while, and work their way into some form and get through. But when you've got the end of year finals and you're, you know, Simona Halep you're just going to be playing Serena in the first match. Or if you're there and you're Naomi Osaka, you've won the US Open like she did, she's going to come in and play in Singapore. And then she's going to have in the first round somebody like Muguruza, who won the, Roland Garros that year as well. So then it's going to be straight away one of the best players in the world. There's no warming up, there's no getting into it. It's straight away top 8 players every match. So in these end of year finals, they have 3 round robin matches where even if you lose, you play on, which is great because that gets everyone to see these top players play more often instead of the elimination. And then once you do that, the best 2 perform players of each group, they're going to play off in the semi-finals. So that's match number 4. And then the final, of course, would be match number 5. So if, for example, you are undefeated in the round robin play and you go to the semi-finals, that means you've won your 3 round robin matches, so you're definitely in the semi-finals. Of course, you need to win that semi-final if you want to have a chance to win that major title, the WTA or the ATP Finals Championship title. So that's going to be your 4th win. And then to win the tournament, you need to get that 5th win. So that's 5 matches in a row you need to win, all against another top 8 player. And given that you're one of those, that means you're basically having to beat 5 of the top 7 to win a title for both the men's and women's. So when you're playing in a Grand Slam, how it works is with the seeding, is the top 8 players can only play against each other 1 to 8 in the quarterfinals. So once you're at the quarterfinal stage of a Grand Slam, that means there's 3 matches. The quarterfinal, if you win through that, you get to the semi-final and there's only 4 players. If you win through the semi-final and you get to the final, then there's just the 2. So there's 3 matches. Okay? So if you can beat 3 players from the top 8 at a maximum, then you win a Grand Slam, versus you're needing to win at least 4, if not 5 matches against a top 8 player to win the end of year finals. So if you look at it in this way, then you'll get my type of view and opinion that the end of year finals should be weighted more. So more prize money, like the WTA did an amazing job where in 2019, the WTA finals, the final match, that the prize money with Ashley Barty and Alina Svitolina in the final was a record prize money for women in tennis. It wasn't at a Grand Slam, it was at the WTA finals. So I thought that was a major accomplishment and fantastic from the WTA to do this. So same with the men's. If there's a tournament where the prize money should be the highest, it should be the men's ATP finals. And it should be the full length. So women, for sure, they're doing their best of 3 sets, and then they should be playing on until advantage to see who really wins and earns that title in the 3rd set. In the men's end of year finals, they should be best of 5 sets, because this is the last tournament of the year. This is the most important title in terms of tournaments. The only better achievement you could be would be to be the year-end world number 1. So this should be going the distance. It should be best out of 5 sets. It should be play on until someone really earns the title by, you know, serving out the match or breaking and then serving out the match, or serving and then being able to break the other person to convert the title. There should be no tie breaks, and as it's been for quite a few years now, is only a 3-set final, just like another tournament throughout the year. This is the finals, the ATP finals, and after this, they're going to have 6-7 weeks off before there's any more tournaments starting. So there's not really any reason that I can see why they can't have a 5-set final for the men's ATP finals, and why for both the men's and women that they can't have a full advantage set to whatever the score goes to see who really earns the title. So then, of course, the thing that I haven't mentioned is, or covered enough, is the other 9 tournaments where they're the Masters 1000, the 9 of those, and then there's the Women's Premier Mandatory and the Premier 5, is these tournaments here are also really major tournaments, and people can be number 1 in the world without winning a Grand Slam, because they might have done so well in all of these 14 tournaments that nobody has done a better or greater achievements and gone through as far consistently in all these tournaments to be higher ranked than this number 1 player. So again, I feel that the points should be more in these major tournaments, the Masters 1000, the Premier Mandatory and the Premier 5. Not as much difference between a Grand Slam ranking points allocation and then the ATP finals and the WTA finals, the year-end events. they have to be way more. They have to be more than a Grand Slam, because it's more difficult to win those 4 or 5 matches against top 8 players than it is to win the 3. So with the Grand Slam, you might have to win the 3 matches on paper against the top 8, but you might have somebody who doesn't play anyone in the top 8 to the final, because some of these top 8 players often can be knocked out earlier. So from the top of my head, I'm pretty sure that Nadal was able to win the US Open a couple of years back against Kevin Anderson in the final, and he played 1 player in the top 8 to win that Grand Slam. So winning 1 match against the top 8 player at end of year finals is not going to qualify for you for the semi-finals hardly ever, unless it's a really lopsided draw where 1 player wins 3 and the other people all win 1 match each, and then they all have fairly close scores. You might possibly get it, but it's not going to get the job done. Of course, Nadal and anybody can only, it's out of their control. Whoever wins through and they've got to play, whether the ranking is higher, that means they've beaten someone who's higher there. But the point is that the quality of players is really high in these tournaments, and that the allocation needs to be higher. So if in, for example, the end of year finals, the men, if they win their whole 5 matches in the tournament, they go undefeated, they win the ATP finals, end of year championships, then they're going to get 1,500 points. If you win a Grand Slam tournament, you are going to get 2,000 points. So to me, that doesn't add up. There's way too much weighting towards the Grand Slam. Then, of course, like the title says, in the men's ATP Masters 1000, they're going to get 1,000 points for winning that title. So what I think would motivate players to play a lot more tournaments, which is better for the sport, in more different countries. Like, for example, when we were lucky enough to have the WTA finals, the year-end championships in Singapore for 5 years, until recently, that is the only time where professional tennis came to Singapore at the time. And so this is a thing that, to grow the sport around the world, of course the biggest products we have are the champion players, the top ranked players, the ones who are the best at the time and for that year. To be able to feel they need to play in more countries at more tournaments, to make sure that they're qualifying for the year-end championships, because that's the be-all and end-all tournament of the year. That's the purpose. That's going to have fans attending, watching, following online, the players, how they're all thinking about the coaches, how they're trying to prepare the players and have a strategy for the year, is trying to get them thinking how we're going to... This tennis is an amazing sport where they're just about non-stop, year after year, going at each other all year, and it's a big thing that goes all around. It's a world tour. They're traveling around the world and they're continuing, and it's not just these, hey, 4 little tournaments here, 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 and here, and then we're done by mid-September. It's this thing that goes on, so it's going to get a lot more following, viewers, interest, a lot more understanding of the sport. Instead of people thinking badly about the sport and criticizing the game because, hey, how does this person become number 1? That's really stupid. They're going to be able to realize that, hey, this is how it works, because it's presented in a way where the players are saying, look, my aim is to be the year-end number 1 player, okay? So then that's going to factor into a lot of things. That's going to get them trying to play. So we've got these amazing people who are great champions, and they're often not playing after the US Open, so we don't see them for a long time, and they're just hanging around for the Grand Slams. Is we want to see if we can have a new way and a new system that's better and improved. So players are looking at, hey, out of all those 9 majors and the 4 Grand Slams and the end of year finals and that pinnacle achievement of world number 1, there's 15 things there. You know, I'm going to try to organize myself to see if I can get as many of these as I can. And we, instead of worrying about if a player can win a Grand Slam or 4 Grand Slams, so they have a career Grand Slam. So like, it's an amazing time now in men's tennis where they've got 3 players all with the career Grand Slam. With Roger Federer did it first when he got the 2009 Roland Garros, and then Rafael Nadal was able to get his one at the 2010 US Open to get his 4th one, and then Djokovic also by winning Roland Garros was he able to get his 4th, so he completed the set. Worrying about a career set of Grand Slam, or even more amazing, which of course in recent years no one's been able to do in men's tennis, is to get all the 4 Grand Slams in 1 year. So, you know, Serena Williams and Martina Hingis have got 3 out of 4 in a year. Of course, that's amazing. But those 4, such a difficult achievement. None of the men have been able to do that. And you have to go back to Rod Laver, who did it in 1962, and he won all the 4 Grand Slams in amateur tennis. Then once it would become the open era and it was professional tennis, he again won all the Grand Slams in 1969. That's a little while ago now. So we need to do something that's much more up with the times and conducive. So we want to have a look at how can we grow the sport, how can we make it more interesting, how can we have everybody following it. It's not going to be so much focus on a calendar Grand Slam or a career Grand Slam. It needs to be about each year maximizing everyone's understanding and the tour and the sport as itself, that there's those really big 15 things, the 14 majors and the biggest one, who's the best player for the entire year, the year-end world number 1. These are the things we want to be trying to push forward for people to follow and realize that, hey, tennis is not just these 4 stops a year. As amazing as these tournaments are, and of course I recommend that everybody try to go and attend live at least once to these famous tournaments, is that we want to make it that this complete package of there's these things that are going on, and the purpose for this are 2. One is to get to the top 8 players in the world, and then to see if you can be the year-end world number 1. You know, set a personal best. If you're able to, you know, only one person's going to be the year-end world number 1. So then, of course, it's going to be, can I get my highest ever year-end ranking or my highest ranking that I've ever got, to set a personal best. That's what everyone should be striving for as a sport, to be better than they were. And as an individual, whether you're just living in whatever your field and your profession is or career, sport, and you're trying to get your highest ranking that you can in singles, for example, for the singles players, then that should be the push and the understanding that people are building towards that, and all these things count and it leads to there. So it's a flow and a whole year, and you build up a lot of momentum, and it really counts at the end, where things tend to die off and a lot of players pull out and they start looking at the following year. So of course I should mention that the Super Steffi Graf did win the calendar year Grand Slam in 1988, and is often called the Golden Slam because she also won the gold medal in the singles in the Olympics in that year. So it has been done, but it's a very rare feat. It'd be much more useful for the sport if we're looking at the major tournaments, those 9, the Grand Slams, the end of year finals, plus the year-end world number 1 as a full package, and then we're evaluating this as a system of who's the best. Then I haven't done it for a little while, but the last time I looked at it, it was something like, under this system of year-end number 1, how many times, end-of-year champion finals, ATP finals champion, winner, Masters 1000 titles, and Grand Slams. The last time, I'm pretty sure when I checked it up, it was something like Federer had 60 of these, and Nadal had 57, and I think it was Djokovic had about 56. But this was a while ago now. But of course, none of these players are operating their schedules and their conditions on being evaluated how I'm talking about. They're doing it on a lot to do with, you know, Grand Slams as the most important thing. So that, of course, would adjust their things, and you would see people like Nadal and Federer doing a lot more of these Masters 1000 tournaments that they opt out, and the end-of-year finals tournament more often. When Djokovic is more prolific in playing the Masters 1000 tournaments, so he has the most Masters 1000 titles out of anybody, or at least equal with Nadal last time I checked. And then he also has won all of them once, whereas both Federer and Nadal have not won all of the Masters 1000 tournaments. From the top of my head, I'm pretty sure that Federer has not won 3 of them, and Nadal has not won 2 of them, and Nadal has never won the end-of-year ATP Finals tournament. So these are all little things that I'm looking at. So this is the main idea that I'm trying to put across to you. So I'll be interested to hear everybody's comments. Leave a comment below, I'll answer all them, see what your opinions are, and maybe we can get a bit of momentum for pushing things to go this way instead of how they've been going with a over-focus on Grand Slams for both the men's and women's tennis. Okay, let me know what you think. Enjoy your tennis. If you like this video, please subscribe to my tennis YouTube channel so that you can get a notification by email each time a new video is uploaded. Also, don't forget to share this video with your friends so they can enjoy their tennis too.